At least 22 Indian nationals killed by Saudi-led coalition airstrikes on fuel smugglers at Yemen's Red Sea port of Hodeidah. The two boats hit in the attack on an area called Al-Koka. France 24 correspondent reports there's speculation over whether the boats were carrying arms for Iran-aligned Houthi militias. Now, all this follows Monday's announcement by Qatar that it was sending ground forces to back up those of a Saudi-led alliance. This in the wake of last Friday's Houthi missile attack that killed at least 60 Saudi, Bahrain, and United Arab Emirates soldiers. This at a military camp east of Sanaa. Let's cross to that city. And political analyst Hisham Al-Omaisi, thanks again for speaking with us here on France 24. It was an air campaign. It sounds more and more like we're going to see a ground assault, a full-fledged one.
Yes, we are. And this is not the first one, by the way. There was a ground force in Aden, and they managed to push the Houthis out of Aden all the way back to the northern region of Yemen. But Sanaa scenario is going to be very different. Qatar is sending 1,000 troops to Marib. They will need a lot more than just 1,000 if they plan to take Sanaa. And of course, now the Bahrainis, the Kuwaitis, even the Sudanese, they're sending their own troops. We're having some reports that there are almost 10,000 troops now in Marib. But again, you're talking about the capital. It's a population of 2.5 million people. A lot of those are pro-Houthi. A lot of those are armed to the teeth. A coalition of ground forces of 10,000 people are not going to be enough to take the capital of almost 3 million people, especially when other provinces around the capital are also Houthi controlled, and they could send reinforcement from those provinces all the way to Sanaa as well.
So what's the calculus by Riyadh and its allies?
A lot of people think this is a psychological warfare more than anything else. Because 1,000, 10,000, not even 20,000, it's not going to be enough to push the Houthis out of Sanaa. Houthis reside in Sanaa. A lot of people within Sanaa, residents, are pro-Houthi. If the coalition wants to liberate Sanaa from its own residents, it's going to be a bloodbath, and they will certainly need more than just 10,000. What they're doing right now, they're trying to squeeze the Houthis into a position where they would implement the UNSC 2216, which is the resolution that asks the Houthis to pull back from the cities all the way back to the stronghold in the north, which is Sa'da.
And tell me about the situation where you are today in the capital.
The capital has been witnessing intensive airstrikes for the past 3 days. After the UAE troops, the Saudis and the Bahrainis died in a strike in Marib 3 days ago, the retaliation was not in Marib. Instead, it was in Sanaa. And it was in residential areas. It was on infrastructure. They hit areas near hospitals. They hit an orphanage. A lot of the casualties are actually civilians. To a lot of people in Sanaa who think they are being held hostage to this conflict, they were angry with the situation. If the population is held hostage and the coalition is trying to save us from the Houthis, they're doing a banged up job, because right now they're actually killing the hostage by bombarding across the city. And in a city where there's severe shortage of gas, severe shortage of drugs, severe shortage of electricity, the people that are hurt cannot be taken to the hospitals, cannot run away from inside the city to the outskirts. Even if by some miracle they make it to the hospital, there's no electricity in the hospital and there's no drugs in those hospitals. It's a catastrophic humanitarian situation.
Hisham Al-Omaisi, when there was a humanitarian truce brokered by the United Nations, did you have hopes that this could turn into some kind of a peace process, that the fighting could stop at the time?
Yes, we actually did, especially when the international community was very involved in the ceasefire, that the ceasefire was viewed as a stepping stone, that from there on, everybody's going to sit on the table, cooler heads will prevail, and they will reach some sort of an agreement. Unfortunately, the last ceasefire did not materialize. It was unilaterally announced by the Saudis. The Houthis did not accept it. Forces on the ground fighting the Houthis did not accept it. Fighting continues. Peace talks in Geneva failed. The recent peace talks in Oman also failed. There's no word from the UN or the international community of the possibility of further future talks. So basically, the prospects are very grim. Right now, what we have is basically the need for a decisive military win. Nobody's talking about future talks. Nobody's talking about open channels for a dialogue. Everybody's just talking about sending troops to Yemen and seeking a decisive military win, which is going to be very hard. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to be at the cost of a bloodbath.
And does it feel, because there's a debate about this, how much of this is a proxy war between Iran on the one side, Saudi Arabia on the other?
Well, for us in Yemen, we've been hearing about this proxy war for a while, since back in 2004, since the Houthi insurgency started back then. For almost a decade now, we still have yet to see Iranian Republican Guards on the ground. The Saudis and the resistance and the Yemeni government in exile currently in Riyadh, they keep repeating every few weeks that they have managed to capture Iranian Revolutionary Guards and Iranian spy cells in Yemen. Unfortunately, we have not seen proof of that yet. The Iranians are not providing weapons to the Houthis. We have not seen evidence of those weapons at the hands of the Houthis. All we hear about the proxy war is in the media, especially the Saudi media.
So who is providing the weapons to the Houthis?
The Houthis are allied with the ex-regime, with ex-President Saleh. They had access to military camps. They had access to military warehouses. They are using the Yemeni military weapons. That was no secret. Even before the Yemeni government, currently in exile, ran off to Saudi Arabia, Houthis were taking over military camps in Amran, in the northern regions, and other areas, especially after they came into the Sanaa. While the president was here in Sanaa, they took military camps, almost 7 military camps inside the capital alone. Those military warehouses and munition storages now are in the hands of the Houthis. That is where they get the weapons. In addition to weapons that the coalition is airdropping for the resistance, some of those weapons fell in Houthi hands.
Events, one final question for you, Hisham. Events that are taking place in Syria, in Iraq, the nuclear deal with Iran, how are things that are taking place elsewhere in the region weighing on what's going on where you are?
Events in Syria, for instance, and the region, they're eclipsing what's going on in Yemen. You don't see a lot of reporting on Yemen, especially for the past 2 months. Saudis now, they're trying to push being the vanguard of the region. The new regime in Saudi, especially the young, unheard of in the Saudi royalty, for such a young person to take the lead, for him to take the lead and build that clout, build his credibility, he needed a war in the region. He needed to beat what he views and other GCC countries and other Arab states sees as a monster in the region, which is basically Iran. He needed to be viewed as a vanguard, a protector of the region from Iran. Of course, he could not attack Iran. He cannot wage a war in Iran. He cannot attack any targets affiliated with Iran around the border of Iran, even in Iraq. So best choice, attack Yemen, pitch it as a proxy state, a satellite state of Iran, and make an example of Yemen for not allying with Iran. And by doing that, he instills a new doctrine where Saudi Arabia is the new hegemony in the region, where Saudi Arabia can also, after Yemen, act in Syria and other places as a policeman of the region.
Unfortunately, though, as we're seeing all sides getting bogged down, Hisham Al-Momesi, many thanks for joining us today from Sanaa.